Good afternoon, class. My name is Andrew Bridges, and I'd like to welcome you to Introduction to Religious Studies. If this is the first religious studies class you've taken, I'd like to welcome you to the field of religious studies as well. So for today, I just briefly like to introduce the course, some of the subject matter we'll be looking at, and give you some familiarity with the world religions that we'll be discussing. A course in religious studies looks at both approaches to the study of religion, theories about world religions, as well as the content of world religions themselves. Many of the what's called great or major world religions are Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Those have been the major world religions over time in textbooks, and then other minor or major world religions. The labels are sometimes varied, would be the Sikh religion, Jainism, Shinto, um, Baha'i, among others. Um, and so we'll be looking at both the theories for studying religions, the approaches, and then also familiarizing ourselves with the content of many of the major world religions. Um, and toward the end of this particular video, I'd like to draw a brief contrast in the ways in which world religions textbooks are organized. This isn't a course in world religions, but we'll be drawing on the content of the major world religions as well when we'll be looking at how religions are approached with the theories. Some of the approaches we'll look at, of course, anthropological, sociological, philosophical, um, hermeneutical, and other approaches as well. Those are just some. We'll be looking at other approaches as well. Um, and some of the major world religions we'll be looking at, as well as their country of origins, are Judaism and Christianity that have their origins in and around Israel. Then we have Taoism and Confucianism that have their origin in China, and we have Buddhism and Hinduism, which have their origin in India. Also, having their origin in India are Jainism and the Sikh religion. Those are known as the four Dharmic religions. And we have Islam, uh, having its origin in Saudi Arabia, but also being connected in a narrative way to the religions of Judaism and Christianity. And what I mean connected in a narrative way is that the same individuals that appear in the sacred scriptures of Judaism, such as Abraham and Moses, will also appear in the New Testament. The New Testament in Christianity will make reference to these same individuals, and then the Quran, the sacred text of Islam, will also make reference. And so, Judaism and Christianity had their origins historically um, in Israel, and Islam historically in Saudi Arabia, particularly in Mecca and Medina. The narrative structure of the sacred scriptures relate to each other, and also the concepts of those religions relate to each other. And so that's something very important to keep in mind when we're studying these religions. We can associate them in that their narrative structures and their philosophical and theological concepts relate to each other, and they're referring to each other. And this can be true in the what we might call the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They will share concepts such as a creator God, prophecy, revelations. If we move over to India, for example, and we look at religions of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, we'll have shared concepts as well. Those concepts, one being karma, the other being dharma. And so those um, Atman will be another concept. Um, those religions will be discussing those particular concepts, um, and we'll discuss them in relation to each other. In a world religions class, we discuss them in much more detail, historically, philosophically, and sociologically as well. Here in the introduction to religious studies class, we will be discussing them. Uh, we'll be gaining familiarity, but we won't be going into as much detail as a world religions class. And then, in a similar way, we have the religions of Confucianism and Taoism relating to each other and in conversation with each other, sharing certain metaphysical concepts such as the virtues, the Tao, concepts like Qi as well. And those will be studied in relation to each other as well. And then afterwards, we'll look at the context globally as well. Now that the situation is such that all of these world religions are in communication with each other, as well as knowledge in general. Okay, so we have two world religions textbooks, and I'm going to show and share how they're structured both in a literal and also, we might say, an ideological way as well. The first textbook came out in 1958, uh, quite famous textbook, The World Religions by Huston Smith, and I still think it is the number one best-selling world religions book of all time. The world religions that are mentioned in there, as we've mentioned earlier, all the ones we've mentioned have been mentioned here. We have Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, um, Taoism, and Confucianism. He has an interesting metaphor for the way in which he organizes the religious concepts, what we might say conceptually, and maybe even, no, we'll just say conceptually. He has the metaphor of all religions are different paths up the same mountain, and they arrive at the same spot in the mountaintop. And I guess the best way of understanding it is they arrive conceptually at the same thing. Essentially, uh, Smith will make the argument in his text that all religions are seeking the same thing, and they're the different paths, but to the same thing. You may have heard world religions presented like this before, and so this is the world religions in the textbook as well as the approach they have. And so here the approach is that essentially they're all seeking the same thing. In stark contrast to that idea is a newer book came out in 2010 by Stephen Prothero, the author of Religious Literacy. You may have heard of that program and that book that was quite relevant. And this text is called God is Now One. And this will have many of the same religions. Uh, he ranks the religions in this order. He ranks them as first Islam, then Christianity, then Confucianism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Yoruba religion, Judaism, and Taoism. And he ranks them in order of greatness. Greatness has nothing to do with goodness, but greatness in the sense of significance. And he ranks them as the most significant religion. I think there's quite a bit of merit in doing it. When you take a class on world religions, for example, you want to learn as much as you can about as many religions as possible, just to sort of gain a what we might call a literacy and a knowledge about as many religious practices, activities, beliefs as possible, so that when you continue to go out into the world, you understand it as much as possible. And so, looking at the most significant um, world religions and organizing them in that way, I think has some merit. But then you have to philosophically ask the question, what makes religion significant. And we'll look at the introduction of this text, and it will give some criteria to that. Basically, what he says is that the religion is growing and has a large number of people, adherents to the religion. So numbers. Um, Also, does this religion influence other religions? Has one religion had influence on the origins or the conversations of other religions? That could also make it significant. And the third is how much influence does this religion have on people who aren't that religious, aren't don't claim to be that particular religion? And so he ranks um, the world religions in order of significance based on those criteria. And he says that Islam is first, Christianity is second, Confucianism is third, and he goes down the line that way. What's also interesting is he mentions in this textbook that there's often a what we might call an organizational and perhaps even an ideological divide between Western religion, so-called, and Eastern religions. The Western religions, if you take years of world religions, sometimes it's divided into West and East. On the West might fall um, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and and uh, when you study the Eastern religions, you might study Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism. They may add others such as Jainism, Shinto, perhaps, and they could continue to add more. And he finds that certain other religions get overlooked in this somewhat traditional, somewhat arbitrary notion of East-West, and so he includes Yoruba religion in the this particular textbook, and this is a religion that has its origins in the country Nigeria, um, and he devotes a chapter to that as well. Let me see if there's anything else I want to say about these two texts before we break. Yes, one more thing. In the text, God is not one. Not only will he rank the religions in order of significance, but he'll also express that each religion is a way to a particular thing, and he'll have a template. And this is quite interesting to the study of religious studies. How do you take about organizing initially your knowledge of world religions and of religion in general? And this particular author presents a template where he says each religion presents a problem, each religion presents a solution to that problem, then each religion presents a technique, and then each religion presents exemplars to that technique. In his intro, he uses Christianity and Buddhism as examples. So, in Buddhism, for example, the problem is suffering. The solution to suffering is enlightenment. The technique to enlightenment is the Eightfold Path, and then the exemplars, depending on the branch of Buddhism, could be the Bodhisattva, the Lamas, or the Arhats. And so this gives a very basic structure to begin formulating your understanding of a particular religion. Also, something about the title. The title, I think, is somewhat misleading. It says God is not one. It's not making an existence claim. It's not saying there is a God and it's not one. That would be not an academic approach to the study of religion. It's not saying there exists a God or there does not exist a God, and this God is a unity. It has nothing to do with that. It's not an ontological claim. Rather, it's a hermeneutical claim, right? And hermeneutical, the study of hermeneutics is the study of what words mean in particular contexts. And all this text is really saying with this title is that what is meant by God is different in different contexts. And when you study religion, um, to gain a fuller academic understanding of concepts, you have to know that they mean different things in different contexts. And that might be somewhat misleading with the prior textbook if you think at the top of the mountain, so to speak, all religious concepts essentially merge into this particular uh, uh, unity concept. You need not go that direction, but if you did, it might be somewhat misleading. So we'll use a secular example, a technology example, to sort of show what is meant by different contexts. Concepts mean different things. If you're reading a article about space travel or about spaceships, and you hear the word spaceship, um, and then you imagine a certain thing, but then you see the word NASA, right? You would imagine a particular type of spaceship, right? And this would be completely different than if you read the word spaceship and then in a few other words you read the word Star Wars, right? You'd imagine a particular type of spaceship as well, but it would be different from the former one. In the former, you might imagine a particular NASA space shuttle. In the second, you might imagine some science fictional spaceship in the Star Wars movies, right? And in both contexts, both would be correct. But if you confuse the contexts, then you might say you don't have an accurate understanding of what the author is trying to say by that word spaceship. And you can do this with any word. With the word prayer, if we bring it back to religious context, if we say the word prayer in a particular context, you might imagine a particular type of activity, whereas if you said it in a different context, you would imagine a different uh, uh, type of activity. Both are prayer, but you want to pay attention to the particularity as well. You want to, how might we say, imagine or have the right concept in one's mind. And what is the right concept? Well, it was the concept that the author who wrote the particular words meant when they wrote it, right? And the same obviously can be said with the concept of God. When you imagine or when you conceptualize or when you understand what is meant by the word God in a particular context, that might be very unique to that context or particularly when we're shifting from one, what we might call worldview. If we shift from the Abrahamic context of the concept God, and even in that context, there's multiple contexts to maybe a dharmic worldview. If we shift to the dharmic religions and we hear the word God being written, we have a somewhat different sense, a different way of imagining that concept. There's other things, other concepts that concept is interacting with, and all of these have to be taken into consideration. And this is what the latter text tries to stress with the title, God is Not One. Another way of understanding the title is whenever we hear a word or imagine the what the word might mean, whether it's spaceship or prayer or God, there might be a particular concept in our mind. We can't just imagine that there's only one concept. And the particular concept in our mind, we would have to ask, is this correct or incorrect? If we think there's only one concept, chances are we will err. There's multiple concepts for most words because there's multiple contexts for most words. And so one of the things we'll be doing is analyzing the particularity of various religious concepts in their contexts. So I hope this helps. I am looking forward to the class. And any questions you have on this video or on others, there'll be a Canvas page where you can post questions. Take care and have a good day.